تفضل أخي.
الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. طيب, I guess this morning will be a reflection, and I'll start by asking or mentioning briefly that one of the etiquettes of a dua is a tawassul. First of all, tawassul bi asma'illahi wa sifati. So basically, tawassul means that you seek to get closer to Allah and to increase the acceptability of your dua. And one of the means for this is by employing the names of Allah or His attributes. And you typically employ the name of Allah or the attribute which coincides with the dua that you intend to make or what you intend to ask. So for example, if a person wanted to pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for his forgiveness, then he would say, for example, Ya Afu, or Ya Ghafur, Ighfirli. Oh, the one who forgives, forgive me. Make sense, ya ikhwan? طيب, another way that you make a tawassul is through some good deed that you did.
What do you mean tawassul?
Tawassul, huh?
Tawassul.
To draw
English.
closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and to seek to increase the acceptability of your dua by what? By a certain means. And like I said, one of the acceptable means is with His names and attributes. Another acceptable mean is by some amal, salih, that you've done. So for example, a person might say, oh Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if I did this for your sake, and they'll mention a deed that they did, then oh Allah, do this for me, etc. And we have examples of this from the Sunnah. Some of you are aware of the famous hadith of the three men who were traveling, and it began to rain heavily. So they dipped, or they took refuge into a cave, and then all of a sudden a rock came and sealed the entrance of the cave, so they couldn't exit. And so each one of them, they said the only way for us to get out of this predicament that we find ourselves in is to make dua to Allah, okay? Tawassulan bi'amalin salih. You know, seeking closeness to Him, and to have our dua more likely to be accepted through some deed that we did. So each person stepped forward and made dua to Allah, mentioning some deed that they had done. I'm sure most of you are aware of this hadith. And each time they prayed, the rock moved slightly until they were ultimately able to exit. Al-Muhim, with that little muqaddimah, with that little preface, let us reflect upon a dua that we make at least 17 times a day. What dua is that, ya ikhwan?
Fatiha.
Al-Fatiha, okay? And if you look at Al-Fatiha and the dua that is embedded in Al-Fatiha, in light of what we mentioned of a tawassul, you see that it begins with Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. All praise is due to Allah, the Lord of the worlds. Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim, the most merciful, the bestower of mercy. Maliki Yawmiddin, the owner of the Day of Judgment. So now here, what type of tawassul is that, ya ikhwan? Asma'ihi wa sifatihi. That will be seeking nearest to Allah with what? With His names and attributes. Wallah. Then after that, Iyaka na'budu wa iyaka nasta'in. You alone we worship, and your help alone do we seek. So what would that be, ya ikhwan? What would that be?
Tawassul bil-amal.
Ahsan, that would be seeking nearness to Allah and to have our dua more likely to be accepted through what? Through some good deed that we did. ثم بعد ذلك comes what? The peak, the summit. Okay, al-maqsood. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم. Guide us to the straight path. Now, I want you to reflect on a few things. One, that this dua is preceded by what? We talked about this to us, seeking what? Nearness to Allah to make our dua more like to be accepted. That shows you that this dua is what? It's so critical. It's so critical that what? Look, you need to make this tawassul. You need to what? Increase its acceptability because of its importance. Second, it's a dua that we've been asked to make no less than what? 17 times a day. Means what? It's critical, it's important, it's essential that we receive this guidance. ثم بعد ذلك, what is the meaning of ihdina as-sirat al-mustaqim? Guide us to the straight path. The scholars of Islam said there's two types of guidance being sought here. Guidance ila as-sirat al-mustaqim, guidance to the straight path, meaning what? So you what? Can recognize it from what? Distinguish it from the errant paths. What? Guidance fi as-sirat al-mustaqim, guidance along the path. So once you're on the path, you don't what?
Deviate.
You don't deviate from the path. And both of these are critical. And I reflect upon this because it's not enough to be guided to the path. We shouldn't think, and some people say this all the time. They say, if you're Muslim, you're guided. You're Muslim, you're guided. You're guided to the path, you're good to go. Okay? Is that true? We know it's not true because of the many hadith and the many narrations of the hadith in which the Prophet ﷺ, he said, ستفترق أمتي هذه على 73 ملة أو فرقة كلها في النار إلا واحدة. He said that my nation, my religious community will divide into 73 sects, all of them in the hellfire except one. Wasn't enough to be just what? Guided to the path. But it was critical to be guided what? On the path, not to deviate from the path. And this made me reflect upon something else. There's a statement from a non-Muslim, but it has truth in it. He said, perception is everything. Perception is everything. Because see, what happens sometimes, ya ikhwan, is that we're taught the right thing. We're not being taught the wrong thing. But the problem is what? Is in our perception. We tend to perceive truth as what? Falsehood. And falsehood as truth. And it's a lot of times no one's fault except what? Our own. That we tend to follow our desires and incline toward what we want and interpret things in the way that suits what? Our ulterior motives and our desires. And as a result, we what? We go astray. And so that's why it's critical to have a clean heart, to come to the deen with a cup which is what? Empty, and let the proofs and evidences fill the cup. Don't come to the deen with what? A cup which is full, because once a cup is full, can you put anything else in it? No. And this is why the scholars used to say that you have to avoid a mistake that's made by many. And that's the mistake that they say, اعتقد ثم استدل. They say, believe in something and then what? Look for proof to what? To support it. That's the opposite of what Islam teaches us. Islam teaches us what? Naduru مع الدليل حيث دار. We follow the evidence wherever it leads. And so this is why we pray, and we have to pray sincerely. We can't pray with a heart which is ghafil, a heart which is what? Indifferent, not paying attention. But we have to pray sincerely, ihdina as-sirat al-mustaqim. Guide us to the straight path. Guide us to it and guide us on it, so that we don't deviate, so that we don't misunderstand, so that we don't misinterpret, and we don't draw the wrong conclusions and end up what? On one of the errant paths. That's my reflection for this morning. I pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to guide us on this straight path and along this straight path until we meet Him. هذا وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين.
I have a question. If you ask that I did a good deed, please forgive me. Can you use that same good deed for next time?
That's a good question. Wallahi, I don't see anything prohibiting that. I don't see anything prohibiting that, yeah. Alhamdulillah. But let's try to be the people who have lots of good deeds and we don't have to just rely on one. But no, he said that if you did a good deed and you made tawassul with that good deed, could you make tawassul with that deed again?
Or with the same deed?
With the same deed, yeah.
Those people who was in the cave, they did not do something on the spot, they did something before.
Yeah, it was something they did before, yeah.
Inshallah, Allah Kareem.
And
generous.
yeah, we said, yeah, if you use it more, but again, like I said, we want to be from the people who.
But there were three people used different.
Yeah, they all three had something different. Yeah. So you all can help me reflect on the hadith, but there was one who he hired some hands to work for him, and one of them left before being paid. So he had the money that he was going to compensate him with, and so he said, okay, I'm going to invest this money. He invested it, and it basically...
It means the owner of the job.
The owner of basically, the one who hired the hand left, and he had the money with him. He said, I'm going to invest this money on his behalf. So he did that, and it made profit, and then it turned another profit, to the point that he had a valley filled with sheep and camels and other cattle. And the man came back and said, you remember, you hired me and I was supposed to be compensated in such and such way. And he said, yeah, I remember that. And do you see this valley filled with all of these different cattle? This is all yours. He said, look, don't play with me. I need the money that you promised me so I can go about my way. He said, this is the money. I invested it and this is the profit from it. And he said the guy took everything, didn't leave one sheep. And he said, oh Allah, if I did this for your sake, because honestly, what could he have done? What could he have done, honestly, Ikhwan?
Amen.
He could have given him the $50 and said,
or I don't owe you anything,
exactly,
and you better get out of here.
You know, he could have just said, hey, I promise you $50. But no, he did that. He said, if I did this for your sake, oh Allah, then I ask that you get us out of this predicament. And the rock moved. So then the next one came, and he said that he had some parents who he loved very dearly, and he used to love to serve them. And I think there was a day when there was nothing in the house, and he went out to take care of some business, and on his return he was going to bring something for the family. So he went out, he took care of his business, but he got delayed, and so when he came back with a pitcher of milk, his parents were already asleep. But his wife and children were there, they were awake and they were hungry. But he liked to serve his family, or his parents, before he served his own family. So he stood at his parents' bed with the milk in his hand, waiting for them to awaken, while his children were there crying for the milk. And so he waited and waited, and when they awoke, he gave them drink before providing for his own family. And he said, oh Allah, if I did this for your sake, then get us out of this predicament. And again, the rock moved. And then last but certainly not least, there was the man who came and he said, I had a cousin who was very beautiful and I loved her very much. And I would make these advances to her and she would always resist my advances. And so then ultimately she got into financial dire straits, basically. She was in straitened circumstances and she needed money. And she came to me asking for money, and I told her, okay, I'll give you the money in exchange for what? That you will be with me. And so she agreed. And so we fixed a time and a place. And then when I came and gave her the money, she said, fear Allah and don't take that which is unlawful for you. And so he said, when she said, fear Allah, I did what? I refrained, I restrained, I withdrew. And I left, and I let her keep the money. Said, oh Allah, if I did this for your sake, then please get us out of this predicament in which we find ourselves. And the rock moved enough for them to what? Escape. So this is an example, and as the Sheikh said, these are all deeds that they had done what? Earlier, much earlier in their life. طيب في شيء يا اخوان anything else طيب هذا وصلى الله وسلم وبارك
جزاك الله خيرا
السلام
السلام السلام ورحمة الله. نعم سيدي.
مرة شالت الورقة لحد حسيت ما قدمتها. ما قدمتها.
أرسلتها خلاص.
أرسلتها
أرسلتها من هناك بالبريد.
إيه؟
بالفود ستامبس.
إيه أرسلتها. وأنا كمان مشان ما جيت يوم الجمعة كنت مشيت قابلته عشان ما يختلف كلامي كنت أدري يوم الجمعة مشيت قابلته.
قابلت مين؟
ديس مشيت. ديس اسمه. كان طبعا أول ما جيت الأولاد كان حاسبوا يعني 574 يقعدوا كل مرة يقعدوا 8 شهر تصرف قالت لي